All right, Charles, Karen, glad you're here. We can spend a few minutes talking about a very important time for Americans, and this is Memorial Day. It's a day when we pause and we visit cemeteries and we place flowers and wreaths on the graves of men and women who fought for the nation. And it's such an important time for us to reflect not just on the fact that these were men and women who fought, but that America is still here, still free, because of such brave hearts. But the memorial tribute goes back all the way to the American Revolution and the beginning. And I had a great-great-grandfather who fought in the American Revolution. Part of my family has been in the U.S. that long. But I want to tell you, in the next few minutes, something that happened to me with my grandmother many, many years ago. I was still a young man. I'm over 90 now, and Grandma's been gone a long, long time. But we were talking about the family and important people and events, and suddenly it occurred to me there was one big area she was deliberately skirting around and not mentioning, not talking about, and that was her own family during the American Civil War, when the North was fighting against the South over whether or not states could secede from the Union. And of course, the underlying problem was the question of slavery. My grandmother's family were Southerners. They lived here in Florida. And I realized she was avoiding that. So I stopped her and I said, "Grandma, I want to know something. I want you to tell me about your family during the Civil War." Well, do you know, she began to cry, looked away, and kind of refused. And I realized there was something special there. And I said, "Grandma," I said, "I want to know. Tell me what you're hiding." And so then, I'll never forget, she just dropped into a chair and buried her face in her hands and began telling a story that I knew my own mother did not know, and that Grandma had never told. And it was this. She said, when my father was a young man, when the Civil War began, and said my family in Florida refused to defend the cause of slavery. They would not do it. They refused to defend the Confederacy. And she said because of that, Confederate vigilantes came to their home, their farm near Madison, Florida, and said they hanged my grandfather in the yard. They caught one of my uncles and hanged him, and said my father, my grandmother, and one other uncle, both young men at the time, escaped and fled. The mother walked all the way, running part of the time, from Madison, Florida to Quitman, Georgia, where she disappeared into the swamps and was not seen again for the whole 4 years or so of the war. And then my grandmother told me, she said, when my father came home at the end of the war, and the farm was gone and burned and nothing but briars and underbrush, and he set out on a search looking for his mother, and said finally got work in Georgia. And one day the sawmill owner where he worked asked if someone in the crew would volunteer to take groceries, food, to two destitute women living alone in the swamp. And she said, my father volunteered and said, Charles, can you realize the shock of his life when he went into the cabin and there in the bed was his mother? And she didn't get out of bed, but she lurched forward in the bed and began shouting, I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come. God told me you would come. And he had. And that was how that part of the family was restored after the Civil War. Well, I was so impressed with what my grandmother was telling me. I said, this story cannot be lost. It must be captured. And there's so much more to the story to be told. But I'm not relating to you now. But I wrote this book, Island in the Sun, because it was the story of this family's home place here in Florida, which became an island, cut off, separated from everyone and everything around it, and that was forfeited during the war. So it was an island. But at any rate, afterward, my great-grandfather returned and was restored. Family finally came back and began rebuilding. At any rate, I've told this in this part of the story. So Memorial Day is a very special day for all of us, but it's a special day for me because I'm so grateful that my grandmother finally broke down and told me the story that my mother did not know, none of the other brothers and sisters. And I asked her, I said, Grandma, why were you secretive about your father's role during the Civil War? And she said, Charles, she said, when your grandfather and I married, his father had been a loyal Confederate. My father had been a turncoat, so the South considered him, even though he was a man of impeccable integrity and honesty, beauty. She said, and I just realized that here in the South, I needed to be quiet about my family story. At any rate, when she told me that, I was so thrilled to learn it. And so it's the story I've recaptured in the book, Island in the Sun. It's available online. You can go to Amazon and order it there, or you can write the ministry here, Charles Curran Ministries, Post Office Box 800, Boynton Beach, Florida, 33435. Remember that. The book is $15. So bless you. So thrilled we can celebrate Memorial Day together and remember our own personal family stories. So until later, God bless you. We'll talk again.